Good afternoon, everyone. Happy World Environment Day. We join with the rest of the world to celebrate this special day. Dr. Kishan Kade, resident representative for Jamaica, Belize, Bermuda, the Cayman Islands, the Bahamas, the Turks and Caicos Islands, United Nations Development Program, Multi-Country Office in Jamaica. Mr. Christopher Wimstone, Chairman, Natural Resources Conservation Authority and the Town and Country Planning Authority. Mr. Audley Gordon, Executive Director, National Solid Waste Management Authority. Mr. Leonard Francis, Chief Executive Officer, National Environment and Planning Agency and Government Town Planner. Ms. Andreen McLaren, Senior Director, National Development, Planning, Policy and Monitoring Branch, representing the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Economic Growth and Infrastructure Development. Dr. Winnie Berry, Deputy Chief Education Officer, representing the Permanent Secretary in that ministry, the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth, and Information, representing Dr. Kassan Troop. Members of government ministries, departments, agencies, representatives of international organizations and development partners, members of academia, civil society organizations, and the private sector, representatives of the media, colleagues, distinguished guests, Mr. Scott Platts, Vice President, Health, Safety, Security, Environment, Quality and Marine Assurance, Accelerate Energy Global, Mr. Shan Mohan Morgan, Regional Health, Safety, Security, Environment, Quality and Marine Assurance, Accelerate Energy Jamaica, colleagues, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Our theme, Recover Stronger, Recover Greener, Integrating Ecosystem Solution in Post-Planning, Post-Disaster Planning. That will occupy our thoughts for the next 2 hours or so, and even longer. When we leave here, we will ponder on our discussions had today. I'd like to thank everyone for being a part of today's proceedings. And so, on behalf of the National Environment and Planning Agency, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the National Environmental Awareness Week Distinguished Lecture 2026. Today's event is particularly significant as it forms a part of the agency's observance of National Environmental Awareness Week, and it contributes to NEPA's 25th anniversary of service to Jamaica. I would like to extend a very, very special welcome on the agency's accomplishment on behalf of our CEO, Mr. Leonard Francis, the executive management team, and the staff of NEPA. We are indeed honored by your presence and grateful that you have joined us for this very important occasion. For 25 years, yes, 25 years, NEPA has played a central role in advancing environmental protection, biodiversity conservation, sustainable development, land use planning, watershed management, coastal resource protection, climate resilience, and environmental governance throughout Jamaica. As we commemorate this milestone, we do so under the theme, which is both timely and relevant. And we can say it by now because it's all in the room. Recover stronger, recover greener, integrating ecosystem solution in post-disaster planning. Thank you. Recent events have served as a stark reminder of the vulnerability of small island developing states to natural hazards, climate change, and other environmental shocks. As we continue to navigate an increasing uncertain future, it's becoming clearer that environmental stewardship and resilience building are not solely environmental concerns. Indeed, they are fundamental national development priorities. Forests, watersheds, wetlands, mangroves, coral reefs, and other natural systems provide essential services that strengthen our capacity to prepare for, respond to, and recover from disasters. Equally important, I'm sure the planners will advocate this strongly, is the role of sustainable land use planning, where and how development occurs in national recovery efforts. Today's distinguished lecture, therefore, provides an important opportunity for us to reflect on how nature-based solution and sustainable land use planning can integrate into disaster risk reduction, recovery planning, and national development strategies. It is our hope that the discussions this afternoon will advance our collective understanding and inspire stronger partnership and action that support a more resilient, sustainable, and environmentally secure future for Jamaica and indeed for the wider Caribbean. We wish to acknowledge at this time Accelerate Energy, a major sponsor represented by Mr. Scott Platts and team, and thank them for their generous support of today's event. We also would like to extend our appreciation to some other sponsors, Seprod Limited, Sagicor Group Jamaica Limited, Conex Services Limited, for their valued partnership. And as we go on, we will thank our other sponsors throughout the afternoon's proceedings. Thank you all for joining us. And so, to open the remarks section, we are going to commence with our chairman for the Natural Resources Conservation Authority and the Town and Country Planning Authority, Mr. Christopher Wimstone. In his capacity, he provides strategic oversight for environmental protection, natural resource conservation, and sustainable land use planning. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me to welcome him.
Good afternoon, everybody. After that long introduction of all our guests, I feel obliged to say all protocols observed, but I think I will have to call some names. So, good morning or good afternoon. We have the Honorable Doctor here, Kishan Kode, who we're looking forward to hear from the United Nations Development Program. We have our CEO, Mr. Leonard Francis, CEO and Government Town Planner, two very important titles. I put much more emphasis on the latter. He knows that. Honorable Edith Chin, who I just met a couple of days ago. Custos, welcome. You guys got the Green Award for your company, Juicy. Congratulations again. Well done. Mr. Wayne Robinson, Permanent Secretary, Minister of Water and Environment. Miss Marcia Henry. Is Marcia here? No, I didn't see Marcia, who I know a long time. Ms. Claire Bernard, Deputy Director General of the Pan Institute of Jamaica. Mr. Peter Clark, Managing Director of the WRA. Mr. Scott Platts, Vice President of Accelerate Energy. Nice to see you. Distinguished representatives of government, local authorities, development partners, academia, civil society, private sector, media, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. So as chairman of the Natural Resources Conservation Authority, I'm pleased to welcome you to the distinguished lecture hosted by NEPA in observance of World Environment Day and as part of NEPA's 25th anniversary. 25 is always a special time in any company, in any organization, any marriage. So it's a time for reflection, especially, and accountability, and renewed purpose. So it's a very special time. As said before by Michelle, for 25 years, NEPA has stood at the intersection of both environmental protection and national planning. A very complex organization NEPA is. A lot of people underestimate it. It is, for me, one of the true multidisciplinary agencies. And I'm familiar with a lot of them. But NEPA is one that really has the true broadest selection of different professions and varying and related and unrelated. And certainly in my short time as being the chairman and longer time as being the deputy chairman, to see how that all comes together in the organization, how different thinking and perspectives come together is amazing. And I honestly will tell you that NEPA does a very good job at managing that and managing their mandate. It's no small responsibility they have. It means helping Jamaica decide not only how we grow, but how we protect the land, water, biodiversity, and communities that make growth possible. I mean, in my capacity as chairman, I hope I bring to the table, CEO and NEPA staff, a different perspective, because I'm also a practitioner in the built environment. I'm an architect by profession, been one for 26 years. But I'm also a tree hugger. I tell everybody all the time that I live under 12 lignum vitae trees. And I had to design that property around all 12, not to cut them down, which was quite a task when everybody else is telling you to cut them down and do what you have to do. But that's only one aspect of it, designing around them. But then you have to live with them, which becomes very challenging. It's not the butterflies. The butterflies is the blessing. It's everything before. It's the caterpillars, and literally, and 12 trees, and in 3 months this set are doing their thing, and in another 3 months, and it becomes a cycle, and we literally have to shut down the property. All cars park on the sidewalk. When they start moving from tree to cocoon, we have to abandon all cars, no cars allowed on the property. Because we've tried that, and then all the cocoons are under your car, and then you lose that life. You lose that when the cars move off and all those butterflies are. So we have to literally live with them, keep all windows locked. Sometimes it becomes very, very personal, you see one wing flapping out of a light socket and you pull off the light socket to get that one butterfly out so he can enjoy his 2 days or 3 days. So the environment is very important, but so is development, so is human existence is also very important. And finding that balance is what we have to do. This year's theme, Recover Stronger, Recover Greener, Integrating Ecosystem Solutions in Post-Disaster Planning, could not be more timely. Hurricane Melissa, which made landfall in October last year, reminded us the hardest way possible that climate risk is not abstract, especially on a small island state. Jamaica's assessed damage and losses have been placed at approximately Jamaican dollars, almost $2 trillion, with impacts felt across homes, livelihoods, infrastructure, and the natural environment. I mean, it's amazing. I did not believe the trajectory, at all. When I saw that hurricane heading south, and it passed Kingston, I was like, just keep going. But what I didn't believe is that any hurricane could do a 90-degree turn. I just thought that was BS. But when it did it, it was awesome because it really did a full 90-degree turn. I never thought that was even possible. I'm happy that we have the technology today to be able to predict that, because then you can prepare as best you can. But you can imagine if you didn't have that technology and couldn't prepare in whatever little time you had. But I found that amazing that it did that 90-degree turn, and then we all know what happened after that. I tell all the guys out in Port Royal who are killing up themselves to protect this and protect that and don't do this and don't do that, that if that hurricane had landed in Port Royal, all your fighting to protect would be gone. So if you need to get under the water to recover things, do it quick. Not say I'm going to do it in 2 years and say I'm going to do it in 5 years, because you might not have that opportunity. Really, if that hurricane had landed in Kingston, in Port Royal, there would be no more Port Royal. Absolutely, it would have been gone. If Black River is any proof of what it does when it touches land, there would be no more. So we have to make hay while the sun shines, is what I was trying to say to the guys out at the JNHT regarding Port Royal. Sometimes we overthink things and realize that we don't have time. It's best to do it as soon as you can. So if there's one lesson we must carry forward is this. It's that resilience cannot be measured only by how quickly we replace what is damaged. True resilience is measured by whether we rebuild in ways that reduce further risk, protect communities, and strengthen the ecological systems on which our economy and our well-being depend. CEO has heard me say, and the NEPA staff has heard me say, I love the smell of fresh, healthy mangroves, but I also love the smell of freshly poured concrete. And that is just not in the same place. And that's the balance I try and bring to NEPA because of my profession and my passions. It sometimes put me in a precarious place because you really have to soul search, and scientifically search for that middle ground, because we as humans have to survive and grow, but the environment that supports us also has to survive and grow. And it's a balance that the NEPA is charged to do. So healthy watersheds, yes, they secure water supply and reduce sedimentations, store and filter water. Mangroves and coral reefs reduce coastal flooding and storm impacts. The global evidence and Jamaica's own experience make it clear that ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction belongs at the center of planning, not at the margins. In Jamaica's case, the evidence is compelling. The Hope Yallas watershed is estimated to supply roughly 40%, believe it or not, of the Kingston metropolitan area. Jamaica's mangroves provide an annual flood risk reduction benefit to built assets valued at more than 336,000 Jamaican dollars per hectare. And if these mangroves were lost, more people would be flooded each year during very intense storms that can protect approximately 770,000 people. I mean, you look at Malcolm's Bay and the impact when the hurricane, when Melissa landed, and it beat the crap out of those mangroves. And those are strong, healthy, robust mangroves. Can you imagine if they weren't there? The damage inland would be much more severe. It's one of these things like the caterpillars and the lignum-vitae trees that we need to learn to live with and learn to love. Mangroves. Everybody, and seagrass. Everybody thinks that, they want to clear their beaches. They want to clear the shallows in the water to take out the seagrass. Everybody has white sand to step on. But really and truly, you lose the seagrass and then you start losing the white sand. There's a relationship. You have to learn to love nature. You got to learn to love that seagrass. You have to learn to love the mangroves. They're not unsightly. They're not uncomfortable to walk on. It's a mindset that you have to change your thinking. They're actually beautiful and very useful natural infrastructure. So post-disaster planning must include ridge-to-reef thinking. It must connect watershed rehabilitation with water security, coastal restoration with community safety, land use planning with hazard mitigation, and public investment with long-term resilience. It must also be whole of society work, bringing together central government, local government, technical agencies, community leaders, development partners, and the private sector. It's an education process that I think Jamaica could do a lot more at in the basic to primary to high school level, so that by the time you're an adult, you have a greater appreciation of some of these things, and it doesn't feel learned, but rather natural and normal, and not being forced on you. And by that I mean recognizing that seagrass is nice and mangroves are nice and that sort of thing. This integrated approach is entirely consistent with Vision 2030, which links a healthy natural environment with hazard risk reduction, climate adaptation, and sustainable urban and rural development. It is also consistent with the global call to build back better by using recovery to strengthen resilience, livelihoods, and environments together. In other words, greener recovery is not an option or an optional add-on. It's a sound development practice. We are not starting from zero here. Jamaica already has important building blocks on which to expand. We have the watersheds policy for Jamaica, which calls for coordinated restoration of degraded watershed areas, something we're trying. I know you guys in NEPA are trying. It's happy to see all of the sanctuaries that are established around the coast, and they speak for themselves. Their successes speak for themselves. In that the very same fishermen you talk to now, you would think it was their idea since inception to have these, and that's a good thing. When good ideas are now being sold or preached by those who used to be against it, it means that there's a mind change that is happening, and what you're saying is working. And obviously they're reaping the benefits in terms of the size fish and the quantity fish. There's also the coral nurseries that NEPA has oversight of the various private and public sector people doing, and those are working very well. I've been to a few of them and seen the little corals growing, and it's truly amazing. I'd like to go with you guys one day on the night dives. I saw a video to see when they were reproducing, spawning, and it was just a joy to see that on video. It'd be nice to see it in real life. A Jamaican Path from Hills to Ocean project is also one project that is supporting restoration from upper watersheds to wetlands and marine protected areas. These efforts point us in the right direction toward recovery strategies that understand that what happens in the hills is ultimately felt on the coast. Left to me, CEO, and Eleanor, we would have liked to have put some restrictions on what happens in our hills as far as development goes. For that very same reason, because whatever happens up there ultimately has to come down, and I think we need to be a bit more sensitive in terms of what's happening in our hills, because we're feeling the effects of it down on the plains. This agenda is also economically sound, and recent UNDP-supported analysis found that a stronger shift towards a green and climate-resilient economy could generate up to 8,000 new jobs in Jamaica, nearly 1% additional GDP growth relative to business-as-usual path. And this matters. It tells us that environmental stewardship and economic opportunity are not opposing goals. Properly designed, they reinforce each other, and that's really what NEPA has a hard job of trying to balance, the pressures of politics and business and the environment that has to sustain us. That is one reason today's lecture is so fitting. Dr. Kishan Kode leads the UNDP multi-country office in Jamaica and has brought sustained emphasis to climate and ecosystem resilience, disaster risk reduction, recovery, and opportunities of blue and green development pathways for small island states. He has argued that blue and green solutions may become one of the greatest development opportunities of our time. As UNDP marks 50 years of its multi-country office in Jamaica, we are especially pleased to welcome a speaker whose work so clearly connects environmental resilience with human development. Dr. Kode, we thank you for being with us today. We thank all our partners and stakeholders for joining with us in the conversations we're going to have this afternoon, as Michelle said. And we thank the team at NEPA under the leadership of Mr. Government Town Planner Leonard Francis for convening a forum that is both timely and necessary. Ladies and gentlemen, Jamaica's recovery must not simply restore what was, it must prepare us for what is coming. It must be smarter, fairer, and more future-ready. And it must be grounded in the understanding that our ecosystems are not expendable. They are actually foundational to national resilience. I could talk more and more and more, but I'm not the guest speaker, so I will leave it there and say thank you very much and look forward to hearing the day's activities.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wimstone. Indeed, we need to balance for sound development practice. Interestingly, you spoke about marriage at 25, and you also twinned some approaches in your remarks. We'd just like to say, if those approaches are twinned, then I do believe, and I think we all believe, that what we will have, stronger communities, healthier ecosystems, resilient future, resulting in a sustainable Jamaica. We thank you again for your remarks. We now invite Mr. Audley Gordon, the Executive Director of the National Solid Waste Management Authority. He is a long-standing advocate for environmental stewardship and public education. Under his leadership, the authority has continued to strengthen national efforts relating to waste management, recycling, environmental awareness, and public engagement. Before he comes, though, I would like us to welcome especially the Honorable Edith Chin, CDJP, who is the Custos Rotulurum. Did I get that correctly? Great. For the parish of Clarendon. Thank you so much for joining us today. And now we welcome Mr. Audley Gordon.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Is that what my wife? Oh, you know. Yes. Honored to celebrate another year with one Kareen. Yes, we are married for 29 years. And today is our birthday, and for my personal safety, I won't spend too long here because I would not want to report a negative next time you invite me. Yeah. I will adopt the established protocols because what the introduction didn't say about me is that I'm a firm believer that too much time is spent on the protocols. Now, I know people will disagree with me, but that's cool. I went to a function, and when I sat there and add the time up, is over an hour that was spent collectively if everybody go up and repeat the protocol. Now, if that's not time wasting, well, I'm good. But I will adopt the protocol, and I trust that I'll be forgiven since time is of the essence. I will, however, start by acknowledging all the distinguished ladies and gentlemen in the room, and I greet you well from the National Solid Waste Management Authority. As the Executive Director for the National Solid Waste Management Authority, I have seen firsthand the dangers of what I call a very bad culture that has evolved in my country. I trust that it's okay to speak some hard truths here. I'm not so sure I must be just diplomatic, Leonard. But the truth is that what we are wrestling against, and all that you have said, is a very bad culture. It's a culture that has deviated from where we were even 50 years ago, 40 years ago. Some basic things that we used to do. One of them was to enjoy picking up the litter off the ground. It was basic, but we used to sing a song, bits of paper lying on the ground. And we used to enjoy moving around and picking it up. And in doing so, at the time we didn't know that we were making a huge contribution to our environment, because by not having the loose garbage around, we would prevent a lot of the flooding that destroy lives and properties, cause severe damage to people's homes. And every time we have a flood, and once the water begins to recede, you will see the cause of the flood in the plastic bottles, the juice boxes, the lunch boxes, all the stuff that get washed down. Now, all those were placed in the environment by humans behaving badly. Now, there's a call for recover stronger, recover greener. But that call will be best served if we begin with some self-evaluation, some reflection of our own bad habits and contribution, negative contribution. Because indeed, when we do the ocean cleanup and when we send divers to the floor of the ocean and when we remove tons of litter from the bed of the ocean, I'm sure that the person up on the hill or who live on the bank of a gully or a drain, they don't connect their action readily with the damage that's being done to even the very fish that they're putting in their plate. So there is a need, and it's a humble opinion, for, as a society, for us to reflect on our own conduct, our own behavior, how we manage waste. It is always that you hear people ask, where's the garbage truck? I don't see the garbage truck. And when last you see truck? The truck no come. The truth is that Jamaica don't have a truck problem. What we have is a waste management problem. Because most, maybe even in this room, believe that waste management is somebody else's job to do. But nothing could be further from the truth. We are responsible for the solid waste that we generate. So if you're finished with your lunchbox or a bottle or whatever juice cup, any form of solid waste, you generate it, you have a first duty to make sure that it is responsibly handled and managed so that it don't create a nuisance for your neighbor. Now, one of the ways we do that at our homes is to properly containerize it. This way, the wind don't get to carry it all over the place, or the rain, the water don't get to, create river for it to float in, or we don't find it in a drain somewhere, or in the most problematic one that we're having now called travel waste, where every public thoroughfare that you traverse, you can see on the sides of the roads items thrown from the windows of a car or just deposited by a pedestrian. The investment in public education around waste management have to be significantly increased. We're giving thanks now that for the first time in the history of the NSWMA, we are seeing a sum in the budget that we can begin to work with. I can't say it is sufficient. We are about $200 million that to direct towards public education. The Prime Minister acknowledged that something is wrong up here, that we have to get into the heads of our people and to get them to reconsider the way we manage waste at source. So we have already built out that program, and subject some tweaking here, tweaking there, we will be going full speed ahead to begin to chip away at that bad culture. It was just Tuesday of this week we launched Operation Calm. Operation Calm was launched in Rocky Point. For those of us here who are familiar with disaster know that Rocky Point, Portland Cottage, that belt, I see Costas here, is usually, even this Melissa here, it was supposed to go. Maybe somebody prayed very hard in Rocky Point. But it is a place very familiar with natural disaster. So we chose that as most appropriate location for the launch. And you asked me, what is Operation Calm? C-A-L-M. Operation Calm is conceived as a proactive approach to flood-prone communities, and we know them. NIPA knows them, ODPEM knows them, the parish councils know them, NWA, NSWMA, we all know them. We have been around and we have seen disasters, and we know the first places you hear the report coming from. And Calm, the C, is to clear all the possible garbage, everything that we can find to move out of these areas right throughout the hurricane season, which is why we say it's a proactive thing. We're not waiting until Evan Thompson announced anything. We're not waiting until we are called to Jamaica House as part of this great thing to say, no, it's near enough. No. We are in the flood-prone areas and we are going through clearing. We have deployed our tipper trucks and we have engaged additional trucks and we are doing a thorough cleaning of the area. And the A is it has an advisory component where we are doing a robust public education program in those flood-prone communities, communicating best practices, giving the do's and the don'ts, how you operate before, how you operate during, how you operate after, how you manage your waste when the truck can't come because there is weather disturbance. When you cut a tree, when you don't cut a tree, because there are people who will have a tree hanging over their house. And I know you don't like to hear about cutting tree, Mr. Stone. I understand, but sometimes that's part of the protective measure that people deploy. I hope they don't just do it willy-nilly, but But there are people who wait and it's while the breeze blowing. Don't laugh, Leonard, it's true. When they see the neighbor one coming down, that's the time they get out in the wind with machete and all that sort of things, trying to do. We are saying, no, look, we have to be careful to assess our properties, look at where the risks are, and deal with them in a proactive way. So the A is an advisory component in there for a sustained public education program where we'll be talking to just about everybody who will accommodate us. We're talking to people in the churches, we are into the schools heavily. We are dealing with the man on the corner. We're working with the elected representatives. We are working with all the youth clubs, the CDCs. We're targeting everybody. We're partnering with SDC. We're just going right out so that all in the flood-prone area will not have the excuse of ignorance. So that's the A. The L is now where we're leveraging the community leadership. Because a lot of these things, we go in to do it, and it don't get the same buy-in as if you use a JP who is popular. If you use maybe you have a good shopkeeper who is very influential, maybe would have allowed a few credits to people from time to time. You get all the different people who can help you with your messaging. We're leveraging that, and we are trying to, and I said earlier that we have the elected people on our side. We always get them first and try to make sure that there's harmony across the different groupings in a constituency or in an area like the flood-prone areas that we are targeting. We have the M now, which is a most important component, and this is the monitoring, maintaining a presence and monitoring right throughout. So we don't just go in and do a program, and it's a nice program, and we get some media and JIS, and it's nice, and we put up some of the feather band or something and stuff. No. This is about work. This is about sustained presence. This is about ensuring that we lead people into a better approach, a better way of doing things. So the maintenance of the space, the monitoring of the space is critical. CALM. But calm also have a nice little psychological thing to it too. A lot of people still reflect on Melissa and get panic attack. A lot of people still wondering, Lord, I wonder if we're going to get anything like that again. And part of what we are trying to do is we deliberately went for that acronym. We try to build something with that. Is to kind of say, no, if we do what we have to do, just keep a steady head. Whatever comes, we will be in a better shape. Whatever comes, we'll be in a better shape. I don't want to detain you too much with the Melissa's story, since all of us would have been quite familiar. Suffice it to say that the UNDP had estimated some 500,000 loads of debris, truckloads of debris deposited on the island. And the NSWMA was tasked immediately to begin clearing that. So far, we are just about 50,000 loads, but I have good news for you. It may be that we are more than 100,000 loads, and I'll explain. Where we would normally, in the conventional way, pack things on a truck and move it. We had some shredders that were donated to us some years ago by Jessif, and we didn't have much use for them, and they came in very handy, some wood shredders. So most of the wooden debris, I would say about 90%, we were able to set stage areas in different parishes, different parts of the thing, and do wood chipping right on spot. And people, they're moving faster than we could ever believe. People want them for farm. It's just amazing. We would leave a huge mountain of wood chip, and overnight we don't see any. And it teaches us a lesson. It is a great lesson in the debris management going forward, that maybe we should have the more wood chippers, which we are ordering, and government is supporting us on that. And not only should we have the wood chippers, that we should arrange staging areas and have them deployed even before. So in case you get a road cut off here, you can move and so on. So proactively we need to have those temporary sites, and we are trying now to identify them. We have looking at currently at a long list of parcels of land that government own right across the country, especially local government, and we are looking to do those staging areas so that we can, when the next hurricane hit, we will be able to move more decisively and more timely. What happened to us is none of us expected what came. So all our wood chippers were at the Heroes Circle stored there. By the time we realized what was happening to us, there were all sorts of other problems that you have to navigate to get them into the spaces where you really need them. So there's a lot of lessons that we learned, and that was one. And we're going into, hopefully we don't get another disaster like Melissa, but should we, we'll be much better prepared. I must also put on record the swift movement of government to find over $1.5 billion for us so that we could facilitate payments of the equipments and the trucks that we had to hire. Also, the other attending costs that come with running operations like that. A lot of fuel was used. You had to drive to Montego Bay 5 times a week because there's no hotel, there's no Airbnb, there's nothing. I mean, you talk about disasters such as happening in areas like Catherine Hall and West Green, where 1,300 homes was overtaken by flood water with all sorts of sand and silt and other debris. Just filled the people's house up. All furniture was covered. People, thousands of people displaced, and you're trying to get them out of the misery as quickly as you can, and you don't have anywhere in Montego Bay to stay, and a lot of the people that you're bringing down, your management, your everything, have to be commuting while we do that. Add to that, there's no phone service, and by the time we get the Starlink set up, that was days into the thing. There's issue with water, there was issue with all sorts of things. But what we have done now, it's good to talk about the problem, but I love to talk about what you have done. We have put our 4 regional offices now in a position where not only do we have the regular electricity, but we have good standby generator that is properly scoped in terms of the capacity to manage our operations. We also have the Starlink set. We also have 4 brand new water trucks. So we will have not only the tanks filled up at the offices, but we'll have water on wheels to help us. So those are some little things that we have put in to make sure that the process is smoother going forward. Now, we talk about this greener approach that we should take. And I see there is a lot of ignorance out there that will have to be tackled. And a lot of it will have to be driven by policies as it will be driven by reports. Now, I would want to just give a few recommendations, if I may, and close off my presentation. At the policy level, I think should mandate the inclusion of nature-based solutions in all national post-disaster recovery framework. For somehow I believe that if you dictate, no, not a good word. If you put a little muscle behind things, it get done better than the moral suasion. It shouldn't be so. We should be able to reason and just things, people just accept the reasoning and just. But I don't think we are there yet. Deepen collaboration between NSWMA, NEPA, UNDP, private sector, NGO, and look at how we can be not just partnership in a piecemeal way, but the partnership is ongoing. For example, we have Operation Calm now. I throw it out there. I would love to get some suggestion. I would love to see how more people want to come in and say, maybe I could help you with the public education thing. Maybe I could help you with this aspect. Maybe I could help. Because, you know what? There's a lot of turf. I don't want to say turf war, but people just, territorial, and everybody just, want a stripe for themselves over here and a stripe over there and so on. And the truth is that together each achieve more. So we want to strengthen and deepen the collaborations. We need to train disaster responders in ecosystem-sensitive waste management. Okay, I'll have a conversation around that too. And we want to establish dedicated green recovery funds and incentives for community-led restoration projects. I know NEPA is a cash-rich company, so I don't think they need that advice. But, if we can go into the communities, train people at the local level, and of course, once you go there, the first word when come out of the mouth is, what's in it for me, the incentive, how much may I get, But if this is an investment that I believe would be well made, because I will emphasize there's a lot of ignorance out there. You talk about the mangroves, you talk about the seagrass, and so on. This public education thing and this trying to get the buy-in and trying to train people is not just for the local, little small communities, Mr. Francis. You have a lot of people, some of them in big businesses, hotels, that need the same training. Because while you see the average Joe out there pulling out the seagrass, sometimes they are just satellites working on behalf of people who would come to these meetings and say, oh, what a shame, they are disturbing the grass in the sea. So we need that education so that people can understand the dangers, they can make the linkages, they can see the connection between their bad behavior and the disaster that they are trying to avoid. There was a pastor man who used to preach some very long sermons at church. One day he went to church with a little bandage under his cheek. I said, Pastor, what happened to you? He said, last night I was thinking about the sermon while shaving, and I accidentally cut my chin. And I said, oh, Pastor, Next time, you must concentrate on your chin and cut the sermon. In conclusion, we will recover stronger, recover greener, if we work together.
Thank you. That was humorous. Oh my God. All right, so we thank you so much, Mr. Gordon, and we wish for you and the National Solid Waste Management Authority all the very best with your Operation Calm. And thank you for reminding us that we need to change the culture towards waste management and in recovering stronger and greener. And we can just start by looking at ourselves, the man in the mirror. So we really want to thank you for that. So as we continue, we will have Miss Andreen McLaren. She will bring us some remarks, as the pastor did. She'll bring us some brief remarks. We welcome you, Ms. McLaren, and thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am going to be brief. Permit me to say all protocols observed. And no, I'm not throwing any shade on you, former Councillor Gordon. So it's my pleasure to represent our Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Arlene Williams, at this distinguished lecture series in observation of the National Environmental Awareness Week 2026. Unfortunately, P.S. Williams could not be here with us today as she has a competing event, but I know her heart is here with us as we continue to celebrate. The theme for this year's observation, Recover Stronger, Recover Greener, Integrating Ecosystem Solutions in Post-Disaster Planning, speaks directly to one of the defining challenges of our time, namely building resilience in the face of increasing environmental and climate-related threats. As a small island developing state, Jamaica remains particularly vulnerable to hurricanes, floods, droughts, coastal erosion, and other climate impacts. Our recent experiences with Hurricanes Beryl and Melissa have reinforced the reality that recovery cannot simply be about restoring what was lost. It must be about rebuilding in ways that strengthen communities, protect natural systems, and reduce future risks. The theme also highlights an important truth. Our ecosystems are among our greatest assets in disaster preparedness and recovery. Healthy forests help stabilize watersheds and reduce flooding. Wetlands serve as a natural storm buffer, while coral reefs and mangroves protect our coastlines from erosion and storm surges. These ecosystems provide essential services that support livelihoods, food security, economic growth, public well-being. Investing in environmental protection is therefore not separate from development. Indeed, it is fundamental to sustainable development. National Environmental Awareness Week provides an important opportunity to deepen public understanding of these issues and encourage collective action. It reminds us of our shared responsibility to protect the natural resources upon which all life depends. Today's forum is therefore especially timely. As countries around the world grapple with climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, and resource depletion, it provides an opportunity for meaningful discussion on the path forward. The decisions we make regarding land use, infrastructure development, natural resource management, and environmental protection will shape the resilience and prosperity of future generations. This year's observance carries added significance as NEPA is also celebrating its 25th year of existence. For a quarter of a century, NEPA has served as Jamaica's principal environmental and planning authority, playing a central role in safeguarding the nation's natural resources while facilitating sustainable growth and development. Through its work in environmental regulation, biodiversity conservation, coastal and marine management, watershed protection, environmental monitoring, and development planning, the agency has helped ensure that environmental considerations remain central to national decision-making. Over the years, NEPA has guided the implementation of critical environmental policies, supported the protection of protected areas and sensitive ecosystems, advanced sustainable land use planning, and promoted compliance with environmental standards. These efforts have contributed significantly to preserving Jamaica's rich natural heritage while strengthening resilience to environmental and climate-related risks. We are pleased that they are part of the Ministry's family of agencies, and as we congratulate and celebrate this important milestone with NEPA, we also recognize that the work is far from complete. Emerging environmental challenges demand innovation, stronger partnerships, greater public participation, continued investment in environmental management and resilience building initiatives. They also require a whole-of-society approach. The government, the private sector, civil society, communities, and individuals all have a role to play in creating the resilient, prosperous, and sustainable future we seek. I therefore commend NEPA and all partners involved in organizing this lecture and the wider activities for National Environmental Awareness Week. I also want to say a special thank you to our distinguished presenter, Dr. Kishan Kade, for sharing with us his expertise and experience at this forum. I am confident that the insights he shares here will continue to even be more meaningful and that the dialogue will strengthen our collective efforts to build a Jamaica that can truly recover stronger and greener. Thank you, and I wish you a productive and engaging lecture.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. McLaren, for your reminders and, of course, our shared responsibility to which we are recommitting today. Is that correct? We're all recommitting to that today? Great. Thank you. We move now into the section of our program where we will have the launch of what I'm going to call a flagship program that we have here at NEPA. And it's so good that in our 25th year, we can think about not just now, but our children and our future generations to come. So we have the launch of a Young CEO program conceptualized by our very own CEO, Mr. Leonard Francis. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Angela Hamilton will give us an overview of the program. We will have the launch done by our CEO, and as in everything, when you're having a program dealing with our youth, then the endorsement of the Ministry of Education is always crucial, as it really puts the icing on the cake for this program. So we will have Dr. I want to get your name correctly, Dr. Winnie Berry, and she's the Deputy Chief Education Officer, and she will bring some remarks after Mr. Francis has launched the program. But before so, Mrs. Angela Hamilton.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. So I'm just going to be telling you a little about the program. The Junior CEO of the Day program, as was said by our Master of Ceremonies, is really the brainchild of our CEO. And let me just get into the presentation. Okay, I'm trying to get this clicker work. Okay, it's on now. Yes. All right. So the Junior CEO of the Day program, the aim of it is to inspire the next generation of Jamaicans to be responsible environmental stewards. Now, I was really heartened to hear our chairman said that, he loves the smell. He's a tree hugger, but he also loves the smell of concrete. And that is what we want. We want for our next generation of Jamaicans to appreciate the importance of being sustainable in our development. And it's something that we're proud to launch this year, our 25th year as an executive agency. So the aim of the program is to deepen youth awareness regarding the importance of sustainable development, to empower young Jamaicans to share their ideas and strengthen their leadership skill. And the initiative will alternate between the high schools and the primary schools. So this year, the inaugural year, we are starting in the high school, and then next year we are going into the primary school. And we believe that you're not too young to learn about the environment and to understand the principle of sustainable development. So in order to participate in the program, the students will be invited to participate in a video storytelling competition. They will present their ideas on sustainable development in a 3-minute video and will be able to show off their digital skills. We know how our young people these days, they're so much into digital and they're so much into, AI and all of that. So we want them to be able to show off their, use that, to harness that passion that they have to tell their story about, sustainable development. Of course, we don't want them to be just, showing off those skills. We want them to be able to give their ideas. So each school will have a competition, and they will select the winning video to represent their school, and each school will submit their entry into NEPA's national video competition, and the winner from that competition will go on to be our junior CEO for the day. I hope I haven't confused anyone. We all understand how the program works, right? Okay. So we know we have to incentivize them. So our first place winner will have a cash award of $75,000, second place $50,000, and the third place winner will get $25,000. If you notice, the prizes, they increase by $25,000 each, in honor of our 25th anniversary. So, if we are over 100 years, some kids could be filter rich anyway. So the winner will also have some interesting opportunities. They'll officially have the title of Junior CEO. Can you imagine being a CEO before you're 20? So they will shadow our top executives, our CEO, as well as our 2 deputy CEOs. They will partner with hopefully some of us here who are, in environmental, line of work. They will be able to learn from you and to be able to use their voice to advocate for their peers and their parents to appreciate the importance of sustainable development. So our website has more information. I just gave you a brief overview. That's the website address and the QR code to be able to learn more about the video storytelling competition and the Junior CEO for the Day program. So I'm now going to invite the brainchild of the Junior CEO of the Day program, our CEO, who can't wait for one of our young Jamaicans to replace him as CEO, as a CEO for NEPA. And he's going to give us his vision and his expectation. And then, of course, we'll hear from our representative from the Ministry of Education.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Now, the fact is that I am getting a bit older, right? And the reality is that I do not believe, and I've said it from over here, that how I see it is, one, I need to retire early to Portland. That's a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom house and just chillax, right? Go to the river, go to the sea. And part of what we're trying to do here is to ensure that the sea and the rivers and everything there is preserved, including Jamaica. So it's a bit selfish what I'm doing here as CEO. So in moving on, I like to believe we should always look on the next 100 years. We are not certain what the next 100 years is going to look like. But what I can tell you, if the rate continue, I don't know what HR is doing in NEPA, but 70% of the senior management in NEPA are female. So if we continue that rate, we all know what's going to happen, right? The junior CEO probably going to end up being a female, which is always good, because you'll never believe this. Anytime, this is sad, but anytime I want to get something done perfect and properly in NEPA, guess what happened? I give it to the female and it's always done. That is sad and a bad indictment on me, but it happens. Now, the junior CEO program is about replacing all of us, is about replacing me. And the reality is that I've said when I was coming in, I'm just interested in 3 years. Then if I got another contract for another 3 years, after the second year in that 3 year, we have to start looking someone. Okay? And that's what I believe, and that's why I stand by that. Now, the reality is that as we move along, we're seeing a young generation coming up. And if we do not want AI to replace us, I want an AI running NEPA, I want an AI being a preacher, I want an AI being your wife or your husband or whatever it is, we have to mentor those who are coming after us. And I was mentored by a lot, that's why I behave so whole, because in Portland, a lot of whole persons used to mentor me. Right? Now, as we go through Jamaica and we see what is happening, I like to go to the primary schools and speak. I went Trout Hall, I've been around, and I've been talking to primary school students. And you never believe what happened. I went to a school, I won't name the school in Trout Hall. It's a primary school. They're having boys' day. It's not Trout Hall Primary though. If you come from that, you will know what it is. And guess what happened? Every single person in that school were females. Right? On a boys' day. No man, hold on. What I mean, teachers and everybody else, not the boys. Sorry about that, not the boys. So here am I speaking, and everybody saying, Miss. And then the teachers correct them and say, no. Then Miss. And it's not a bad thing, But the reality is that the men need to step up. Now, that is a sidebar to young CEO thing, because I'm telling the men in here, you need to step up. Now, just think about it. If we have a young CEO every year coming right up, the possibility is that what will happen is that we'll always have a cadre of young minds who are ready to replace every single one of us in a sustainable development business. That is what will happen. But we just don't want a program for a program or a project. We want persons who are going to invest in them. And that's why I'm telling PR and telling NEPA, telling NRCA, Mr. Wilmson has now become my best friend because NRCA have a lot of money. The idea is that whoever wins, we want to put them up like for 3 days in our hotel. So, wink, wink, we are looking sponsors to pay that hotel part of it. And that's why our good friend Costas is right here. And the other part of it is that we want to put up also their families. And if we have enough money, the idea is that we could have first, second, and third. Now, that student that comes in will, for that day, and I know the purists are going to say it cannot happen, will have a certain level of autonomy, authority, and they will sit in my chair for that day, chair the various meetings that I chair. Of course, they'll get somebody to guide them so they don't destroy the world. And we're also going to be taking them around to the UN, the various permanent secretaries, the minister. And we want to do that for 3 days. We also want, at the time, they'll be out. Because Eva said, you cannot take children out of school. So NEPA itself is a university, right? Let's face that fact. And so we'll also be teaching them. We'll teach them for those times so we'll not miss. And we want them to continue to be part of a program of mentorship because NEPA is strong on mentorship and succession planning. So guess what? Every one of you here gathered right here will have an opportunity to participate and to partake and to be part of the future of the country. So thank you very much for coming. I would like to wish you happy. Great. Thank you very much.
Let me first acknowledge, and I must do this, I'm representing our Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth, and Information. So our moderator, Miss Michelle Grant, who is our Masters of Ceremonies, Mr. Wayne Robertson, he is our Permanent Secretary. Is that correct? Yes. Mrs. Marsha Henry, is she in? Not here today. But let me also acknowledge Mr. Leonard Francis, CEO of NEPA. We all want to come to Portland with you. Sitting close beside me was also the Vice President of HSSEQ, Mr. Scott Platts. Yes, Vice President of HSSEQ. Other distinguished, the Honorable Costas Rottorola. Welcome, I acknowledge you. Other distinguished and specially invited guests, senior officers and members of staff of NEPA. There are students here? Not today. Teachers are here? Yes, and principals are here, and members of the media, good afternoon. Permit me to acknowledge the leadership of all of you here this afternoon. It is a pleasure and privilege to join you for the formal launch of NEPA's inaugural Junior CEO for the Day program. And I'm doing this, as I said before, on behalf of our Permanent Secretary, who really could not be here. This, however, as she shares, is an initiative that speaks directly to the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth, and Information. It is our commitment to developing informed, responsible, and empowered young citizens. As our CEO spoke, I was so thrilled to hear what you're saying. As a geography teacher for a number of years, and also, and with other subjects, sociology and social studies, and I'm very proud to say that a number of the things you spoke to have been crafted in our curriculum, the National Standards Curriculum. Many of these are targets, and I'm saying that a program of this nature can only serve to reinforce what we're trying to teach this generation to carry to the next. We talk about sustainability, sustainable education. And so this is so appropriate. And so today's launch is particularly fitting as it forms part of the activities commemorating NEPA's 25th anniversary. You said 100 years, we'll get 100,000 each step up. And this is your 25th anniversary as an executive agency. For 25 years, NEPA has played a critical role in safeguarding Jamaica's natural resources, promoting sustainable development, and building public awareness about environmental stewardship. This ministry is proud to have been having a long-standing relationship with you. When we were writing the National Standards curriculum, there were representatives from your office who came in, and we were able to fit some of those targets in. So we have had a long-standing relationship with NEPA. Over the years, our collaboration with you has provided countless opportunities for students to learn about environmental protection, climate action, biodiversity conservation, and sustainable living. Together, we have helped young Jamaicans understand that caring for the environment is not just a responsibility, it is an investment in the future. The ministry is pleased to partner with you in this program that aligns so strongly with our commitment to developing confident, competent, and socially responsible citizens. Through the National Standards Curriculum, and you've heard all about the NSC, that's what it is, a National Standards Curriculum, we seek not only to equip students with academic knowledge, but also to nurture critical thinkers, problem solvers, innovators, and leaders who can contribute meaningfully to Jamaica's sustainable future. And as you so aptly described, this program, Critical Thinking, 21st Century Skill, a must, is so much a part of the platform of what this program is about. The Junior CEO program embodies these aspirations. It challenges students to examine real environmental issues, connect them to the principles of sustainable development, and propose practical solutions. Importantly, it gives young people a platform to use their voices creatively and digital storytelling skills to influence positive change. As Jamaica continues to confront the realities of climate change, environmental degradation, and increasing demands on our natural resources, we need a generation that understands the delicate balance between development and environmental stewardship. The students participating in this competition will not merely be competing for a title or the money. They'll be engaging in a process that encourages civic responsibility, environmental awareness, and leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, the Junior CEO for the Day program represents another significant step in this partnership. It offers students a unique platform to showcase their creativity, critical thinking, and leadership potential skills through storytelling. It gives them an opportunity to engage meaningfully with issues that affect their own communities. And I can tell you that based on what happened in Jamaica and is happening now, this will be lived experiences. This is not something they'll be reading about that comes from some other place or they've heard about. It will be their own experience. We have all experienced it, whether we were living in Rocky Point or Portland or the western end of the island. Some impacted much more than others. And those who seem not to have been impacted physically have certainly been impacted emotionally, mentally, and otherwise. And so it offers them a great opportunity. It gives them an opportunity to engage meaningfully. As educators, we recognize that learning extends beyond the classroom. And so programs like these, they allow students to apply the knowledge they have learned there. So you're talking about applied knowledge here. This is what this is all about. I'm particularly encouraged by the objectives to strengthen youth leadership, enhance understanding of NEPA's work, promote sustainable development, and support youth development. These goals align perfectly with our vision. Our students are not here, but they may hear this. To those who will participate in this competition, I encourage you to embrace the opportunity with enthusiasm and purpose. Use your voices to tell compelling stories about the environment and the importance of protecting Jamaica's national heritage. Your ideas matter. Your perspectives are valuable, and your contribution can inspire meaningful change. I also wish to commend the schools that will support this initiative, and our principals and teachers are here. You will support this initiative by conducting your own internal competitions. Your involvement demonstrates a shared commitment to nurturing leadership and civic responsibility among other young people. It's a domino effect. As we gather today as a distinguished, or a lecture is coming up. Yes, for a distinguished lecture focused on disaster recovery and climate resilience, we are reminded that the challenges facing our world require innovative thinking and strong leadership. Programs such as Junior CEO for the Day helps to cultivate the next generation of leaders who will help Jamaica navigate the challenges with confidence and vision. I saw that in you when you stood here. So, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information, and in particular, our Permanent Secretary, Dr. Casson Troop, I congratulate NEPA on this timely, help me, and impactful initiative. We look forward to strengthening our partnership and continuing to create opportunities that empower young Jamaicans to become champions of sustainable development. NEPA for many years has been all over our classroom with charts and things they have provided for many years for our schools. And so, as I told you before, this is a strengthening, continuing of the relationship we have had. I wish every participating student the very best and look forward to witnessing the creativity, the passion, and leadership that this program will undoubtedly inspire. We thank you and we ask God to bless you and to bless Jamaica, the land we love. And so, the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information endorses this inaugural Junior CEO for the Day program. It's launched.
Thank you, Dr. Berry. And we're going to do something symbolic now as a symbol of our partnership going forward. Yes, don't go too far. We're going to have a photo up. So I'm going to be calling Dr. Berry to come back here at the front. Our CEO, Miss McLaren, who is representing our parent ministry, and our representative from the Association of Science Teachers in Jamaica, Dr. Debbie Devonish, and Miss Kadesha Crony. I hope I pronounced that correctly. As well as Mr. Kode, all our partners here that I just mentioned. And we're going to be doing it in front of...
Thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Winnie. Thank you, Mr. Francis. Thank you, Mrs. Hamilton. Lunch has been served, and we have started to partake, but nonetheless, let us just do graces. So, Lord, we want to thank you for the provision of this meal. Lord, may it be of good nutrients to our bodies. May us in return be good stewards to the environment. We thank you again, and thank you for this gathering. We thank you for this distinguished lecture, and for everyone who is gathered in this room, online, and who will watch later. For all your mercies, we give thee thanks. Amen. And so we will break for lunch for about 15 minutes. Use the time to network with each other. And while we break, we will have some entertainment, brief entertainment, and then we will get into our lecture. And we will have Mr. Anthony Mackenzie, our Deputy CEO. He will introduce our distinguished lecturer. I trust you'll enjoy the meal and the networking opportunities available. Thank you.
Happy World Environment Day. It's my pleasure to introduce our lecturer today, Dr. Kishane Coden is resident representative of the United Nations Development Program Multi-Country Office here in Jamaica. From here, he represents the UNDP in the Bahamas, Belize, Bermuda, Cayman Islands, Jamaica, and the Turks and Caicos Islands. Dr. Kude has served with the United Nations for 25 years, including per tours of duty in China, India, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan. He has led over $1 billion in UN grants across the global south to combat poverty and inequality, enhanced systems of governance and justice, and accelerate climate action and ecosystem resilience. A scientist and international lawyer by background, Dr. Kude has also been a thought leader on the planetary crisis and climate justice, speaking regularly at global and regional fora, and having authored over 30 publications in UN and academic journals. Right. And this has been on the transition to sustainability. His latest report is Future Earth: Reparatory Justice for People and Planet, as a contribution to UNEP's or the UNDP's upcoming 2026 Global Human Development Report on planetary and human futures. Join me, in welcoming Dr. Kude.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. No, it's a pleasure, it's a privilege to be here. And so let me start on behalf of UNDP thanking Mr. Francis, Mr. Mackenzie, Ms. Williams, and the whole team at the National Environment Protection Agency, as well as our other partners that are here today from the Planning Institute, the PIOJ, P.S. Robertson from MWEC, and everyone else that's here today with us for this important day, World Environment Day 2026, themed on climate action globally. And of course, synergizing nicely with National Environment Awareness Week and this theme of resilient recovery, green recovery. So important. As we know, this year again is another example of what the climate crisis brings. More frequent and severe events, a very hard, heavy El Nino that's shaping up, possibly as they call it, Super El Nino. And so that resilience is needed definitely going forward as we do recover from Hurricane Melissa day by day. So again, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to heed the call of Mr. Gordon, and I'm gonna focus on my chin. I did shave today, so I'm focused on my chin, and I'm gonna keep it succinct so that we can, I know it's Friday afternoon, but it is an important day to mark World Environment Day and National Environment Week, the kickoff. So I'm going to start with a presentation, and this is really focusing about recovering ecosystems and communities, particularly in Western Jamaica. Oh, right. Sorry. Yes. So firstly, as we know, there's now today more carbon in the atmosphere than there has been in 2 million years, according to global scientists. Last time there was this much carbon in the atmosphere, the Arctic was a rainforest, which is, of course, hard to imagine. But that's what the scientists tell us, that was the last time there was this much carbon up there in the atmosphere. And that carbon, of course, has been accumulating over the last couple of hundred years. And so Jamaica and other small island development states, hardly a contributor to those emissions, but definitely at the front line, unfortunately, of the impacts. So we're seeing in particular in the Atlantic a rapid acceleration of ocean warming, an acceleration of those more frequent and severe systems, not least El Nino in front of us, but we saw Beryl and Melissa in recent times. Some of those ocean warming events, marine heat waves, are lasting more than 500 days, which is, of course, close to 2 years, more than a year and a half straight of a marine heat wave. So we can see that graph there in terms of how that's changed over the years, the mean annual temperatures in the ocean. So, of course, disproportionate impacts, as we know, unfortunately, for SIDS. So among the most vulnerable globally, despite upper middle income, even high income, national and per capita levels, but at the forefront of national vulnerability globally. And so that's something that we take very seriously as the UN Development Program, to make sure that support and cooperation is there. Globally, we know that over 200 million people could be climate displaced in the coming decades and pushed back into poverty because of this process. And so this climate inequality hybrid, the connection between climate impacts and growing inequality and the possible push back into poverty, is really a need to rethink development, rethink what recovery looks like, but also, of course, prevention towards more restorative pathways, including for restorative ecosystems and communities. And so, therefore, it's a call, of course, this event today on World Environment Day to really prioritize green recovery, ecosystem restoration. And we stand steadfast as UNDP, together with our partners in MWEC and in NEPA and other ministries, communities across the country, in actually trying to achieve that goal of restoration of ecosystems and communities as we recover from Melissa. For 25 years, firstly, a big congratulations to NEPA, of course, on the 25-year anniversary. Yes. And for 25 years, it's also for us an anniversary of UNDP partnership and support to NEPA. And that's something that we're very proud of. A lot of successful initiatives over the years, whether it's around the national parks, around the marine protected areas, establishing pilots and then scaling that up over those 25 years. And so that's something that we continue to put as a success story for UNDP cooperation here in Jamaica over the past 25 years. Now, key priorities going forward this year and forward on coral mangrove restoration, rehabilitating eroded coastlines, reforestation of decimated landscapes, watershed recovery, integrating green solutions into building design as buildings come back, whether it's on roofing or structures themselves, and other infrastructure. There's a big space to integrate green solutions into that infrastructure build back that's taking shape. So the national economies and local livelihoods have a heavy dependence on these natural systems. And so this vulnerability to the natural systems, of course, is affecting multi-dimensional poverty. So yes, income levels, but there's those other dimensions of inequality and poverty that are really shaped by this degrading ecosystem, these challenges of vulnerability. I won't linger too much, as we all know, that it was the strongest ever Hurricane Melissa in modern history of Jamaica. The upper ranges of Category 5, almost pushing for really defining what Category 6 looks like, because it was really at the upper ranges of Category 5. Loss and damages from the United Nations Loss and Damage Assessment Report with government. $12 billion that Jamaica has suffered from this one event. And that's close, of course, to 60% of 2024 annual GDP. And so this is one of the most catastrophic impacts of any country. It was the record, the biggest impact, 2025. But even if you look back at modern history globally, it's really historic in that sense as well. Of course, our colleagues at UE, the climate group, immediately after landfall did a very good analysis showing that Hurricane Melissa, the severity of its impact was 6 times more likely because of climate change specifically, right? And so that was a very important contribution by the UE climate group to actually, that particular element of the connection to the climate crisis. New world record set, tying Hurricane Dorian a number of years ago, and that world record setting, on landfall in New Hope. So this is really unprecedented, but also, unfortunately, a new bar. So we can, unfortunately, expect more severe and frequent disasters into the future, as we know the trends. Now, when you talk about the impacts, as we've seen from the UN assessment and other assessments, the ecosystem component of overall loss and damage was a significant one. When we look at the loss side of the tabulation, about 30% of all the losses, apart from the damages on the damage side, but on the losses from Hurricane Melissa, 30% of all that is related to environment. According to NEPA and Ministry of Forestry analysis, more than 40% of forests have been impacted, over 2,000 hectares of mangroves, and more than 90% of mangroves in those impact hotspots in Western Jamaica. And of course, as we know, the government have identified 8 sites for priority restoration works, St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, Montego Bay, Falmouth, and other areas. And these actions are aligned under the national strategies. And we, of course, commend the government for its work on the emerging National Ecosystem Restoration Plan, which is an important framework not just for this event, of course, but going forward in general to restore Jamaica's ecosystems from various impacts. So again, priorities for building back better in the coast, but also inland. Particularly water retention is a major priority, not least this year with the impacts of Hurricane El Nino, with the risk of drought. And we saw what that was like, the back-to-back 2023 record drought and water issues after that barrel, after that Melissa. So you really kind of have to prioritize those most vulnerable communities that are trying to, again, recover when there's another crisis potentially on the horizon. Now, in terms of priorities for green recovery, from our perspective, the use of strategic environmental assessments. So using environmental assessment methodology at the upstream when we're thinking about national recovery framework, the national recovery plan, those subnational recovery plans as well, looking at them at the upstream at the early stage in terms of integrating, reducing risks, for future risks in terms of that infrastructure reconstruction, but also much of the other work that's going to be focused under those plans. I think that's a very strong opportunity since we're still at that stage of crafting these plans. And as we know, there's billions of dollars of large-scale investments foreseen from domestic budget, from international partners. So that's one priority, I think, is on the assessment and planning side. I think it's good to also think about it in terms of, we have a big focus, of course, as UNDP, but also, of course, in government as a country on the social security system. How do you enhance the ability of communities to have that human security level through a social security system? I think it's time to start thinking about ecosystems as a security system as well, thinking of it as an ecological security system. Because if we see these services from the ecosystem that have been impacted by Melissa, we can see also how that's impacting social security and human security on the left side. Livelihoods, clearly, when you talk about whether it's poultry farmers or farmers in general, fisher folk, other livelihoods that have been impacted. But I think this kind of analysis, this kind of framework would be important in terms of building back better or recovering in terms of a policy framework, making policies and approaches to human security also really factor it in within development, not as an environment issue, but really bringing it to the concept of development itself. And so as UNDP, we launched last year what we call the Multidimensional Poverty Index Global Report. And this is looking at multiple deprivations on the social side. But for the first time, we focused this global report on the nexus to climate change and ecosystems, and how that is a source of multidimensional poverty. And so this was the first time, as I said, in this global report that we're looking at those layers of how the climate and ecosystem vulnerability adds a layer to various pre-existing social vulnerabilities and multidimensional aspects. If you see here on the orange graphs, the orange bars, that's when you put that climate and ecosystem overlay. That's the added vulnerability to those various determinants of social vulnerability. Right? Child mortality goes from 21 to 116 as an indicator when you add on that climate and ecological hazard. And the list is down there. Water goes from 15.153 to 355, which is a bit more intuitive when it comes to water. But when you think of some of the others, housing, again, as we saw, unfortunately, last year, heavy impacts from the climate crisis. And so here in Jamaica, we supported a human impact assessment through the strong cooperation with PIOJ and other partners. That's really looking at specifically at the human impact, at the micro level, let's say. And that's something that's about to be published. It's being finalized, and it's about to be published. But that'll look a little bit more nuanced at the multidimensional poverty element of what happened from Hurricane Melissa. And then to overlay that with subnational climate maps and analyses, which are also emerging, so that we can make this strong vulnerability nexus in advance and to plan ahead effectively. As we know, many parishes that were affected by Hurricane Melissa were already suffering from 20-25% multidimensional poverty rates. So income poverty rates obviously have improved significantly over the years. But multidimensional poverty is still significant challenges. And so with the impact of Hurricane Melissa, that increased, of course. 30 to 40% multidimensional poverty in some of those communities that have been impacted. And so that's serious, that's significant. And this nexus then again between ecosystems and social vulnerability is quite critical to understand during the recovery as well. We recently completed UNDP together with UN Environment, UNEP, and with the UN Disaster Agency, UNDRR, a joint review of the environment sector within disaster needs assessments, to integrate that effectively into disaster needs assessments. There is the Multidimensional Poverty Index report, which I recommend in terms of that nexus, specifically to climate and ecosystems. And we also launched last year a broader report on development at risk, which looks at the multiple crises before us, including the economic crisis around energy, et cetera. So now I'll come, I think it was Mr. Francis that said earlier, or Mr. Gordon that said earlier that, it's not just the theory, but what are we doing about it? So I also want to spend a little bit of time just talking about some of the initiatives that we have ongoing, or some of the initiatives that you have ongoing that we're supporting here in Jamaica. So firstly, UNDP implements about $4 billion US dollars of grants for the green transition, 140 countries around the world. So we're the largest in the UN team in terms of implementing grants for environment, for the green transition. And in Latin America, Caribbean, these are the statistics here. Currently, close to $700 million US dollars of projects across the region, and another 300 million that are under development. So this is really a priority for UNDP in a way that really connects with that social inequality agenda, in particular, many of the projects that we do undertake. One example is the Jamaica Resilient Recovery Initiative, or JARI, that we launched weeks after landfall with the strong support of the European Union, the CARICOM, Caribbean Development Fund, the CDF, AusAid, and other partners. And that one of the key things at the upstream level, again, is those assessments, as I mentioned, the human impact assessment, collaboration for other assessments, but importantly, collaboration on a new national spatial plan, which is quite critical when you talk about land use on a preventive side to reduce the risks of impacts, whether it's to human life, to buildings, to infrastructure investments, to protecting ecosystems, of course, in terms of no-build zones. So that cooperation with the government on the national spatial planning process is quite critical. And then local plans for specific areas, like the work we're doing with NEPA, UDC, and others around the Black River area. Now, local action grants for the communities also under this initiative. So we've scaled up solar solutions for some of the communities that had kind of lingering challenges with electricity access, or to, in fact, build the resilience so that when a new system comes, they have that locally to be able to continue energy access through those solar systems should, the grid get cut again in future events. So building that resilience, community resilience, economic resilience, social resilience through solar systems. Debris management, as was mentioned earlier, close to 5 million metric tons, of course, were created out of Hurricane Melissa island-wide. And so that's a major challenge that's ongoing. And supporting those SMEs, those small and medium-sized enterprises, informal and formal, to really restart those livelihoods. A very dedicated focus, of course, through our partnership with NEPA on mountains and forest ecosystems. And so a large-scale initiative that's taking off in earnest. Nationally, of course, as we know, a significant impact on the West, on the cockpit country. It's a critical ecosystem globally. It hosts 60% of the island's vascular plants, a primary sanctuary for amphibians, birds, island-wide, as a sanctuary island-wide. And of course, it was in the direct path of Hurricane Melissa, as seen in the map. Major loss and damage, major damages, of course, the communities, but also losses to those ecosystem services, which are national ecosystem services. So it provides 40% of the groundwater across Jamaica. 40 rivers and streams originate from the watersheds around the cockpit country. So in terms of local action, the new initiative that's going to be launched is focusing on a number of key actions. And I want to again express thanks for the cooperation with NEPA and other partners on this initiative, which is going to bring some tangible green recovery potentials locally. One is supporting zoning in the protected area and monitoring of the species recovery in the cockpit country. Prioritizing native species, so in terms of reforestation, as we know, choosing some of the native species rather than the pine and other species. Landscape planning, protecting some of those intact forests. So in the scheme, the grand sweep of all the impacts, actually there were some bright spots where somehow forests were able to withstand better than others. So resilience anchors, building on those intact forests for future conservation efforts. Green infrastructure. So as we know, they provide a significant amount of water security to Jamaica and other resources. So thinking of those watersheds and those ecosystems in the cockpit area as that critical green infrastructure for the national economy, but also for those critical social security dimensions I mentioned earlier. Engaging local communities, of course, as agents of change. There'll be a very important local grant facility to bolster community resilience, supporting SMEs, and expanding good practices for sustainable resource use, including a potential really for getting more traction and impact on recovery of ecosystems. A second example I just want to highlight, which is worth highlighting in the discussion, is of course the impact on the tourism sector, which was significant from Hurricane Melissa. And so another large-scale initiative together with Minister Bartlett and team and private sector from across the country in terms of the tourism sector. And this is really towards integrating green solutions into the tourism sector, whether it's in terms of buildings, designs, in terms of that build back, not just big, but also medium-sized and small facilities and community tourism, et cetera. The whole ecosystem, really, all the SMEs that are linked to the tourism sector. So public-private partnerships to scale up sustainable tourism goals, support to the small and medium tourism enterprises for new investment projects that can actually achieve this national goal of ecosystem restoration and greening. Supply chains opportunity really to bring back, build back in a way that expands the ecotourism sector specifically, along with branding, along with that global connection. This is an initiative that UNDP leads in the UN system, but then we also have UN World Tourism Organization and a number of other UN agencies connected to that program. Solar for Recovery, I won't spend too much time on, but that's a program we're going to expand out to their strong cooperation with MWEC and other partners. That's really, again, to build that community resilience, to have that energy solution locally so that when a disaster does strike, there's that extra support, that extra asset for communities to lean on. And that also reduces, as we know, the growing energy costs, so that creating some fiscal space also for families and communities to allocate to health, education, and other priorities. I would, not do justice to our cooperation with all of you without mentioning our small grants program, our community grants. So we have about $3 million across Jamaica, Belize, and Bahamas to provide direct grants to CSOs and NGOs across the country. Here in Jamaica, we just launched, I think last week, if I recall, our next phase of these grants to CSOs and NGOs. And so that's critical support to, for example, some of those local NGOs that are in charge of the fish sanctuaries or the coral restoration sites, or various other activities. Sometimes it's about small business artisans, nature-based products, but in the cultural space or the artisan space. So that's really important, again, from both recovery of communities as well as the ecosystems. Now, as we're speaking of Hurricane Melissa and major disaster impacts, of course, we have the new Global Fund for Response to Loss and Damage, which is just getting underway, providing the first round of grants. And so, as a comparative example, in Belize, we've submitted just last week a large submission together with the ministry to specifically focus on the ecosystem element of loss and damage, actually. So almost $500 million of loss and damage in recent decades in Belize. And so this project is going to be able to formally recognize in the national system, legislatively and otherwise, the non-economic losses, such as ecosystem services. We provided support earlier to a national loss and damage framework in Belize, which is quite an important base for doing these initiatives. But this is also prioritizing those community, social, and ecological recovery needs. So it's not just about big infrastructure, but also early warning information systems, etc. In the Bahamas, another just comparative example that's useful is, in the years after Dorian, we decided to support climate risk finance scale-up in the Bahamas. And so this is specifically around climate-based insurance products. So in addition to the support from a CRIF or cat bonds, etc., there's more to be done to actually bring that social protection, adaptive social protection, as it's called, to those communities. And so this initiative is going to be focusing on some of the farmer communities and some of the family islands in Bahamas to bring those insurance products to small-scale farmers that may not be eligible otherwise for, larger-scale insurance often. Informal sector, not everybody's always eligible or easy to access climate insurance. So this is, again, looking at that connection of climate and inequality. And this builds on this important photo down here on the right, which was just launched late last year, which is a new Category 5 hurricane shelter community center that we launched in Abaco through the valuable support of India. And that's able to withstand above Category 5, actually. It went to the higher ranges of Category 5 in case another Dorian comes their way. And so this is also something we had very good discussions with Meg ID also about, what would infrastructure that can withstand Category 5 in terms of shelters look like, whether it's centralized examples like that in community centers or decentralized approaches at the community or household level. So that's an important piece of the puzzle in terms of recovering and building those things in a climate resilient, ecological resilient way, those facilities in terms of water use and energy use, etc. And that concludes a quick snapshot. I hope I did justice to Mr. Gordon's call to action in terms of shaving off the sermon, but I hope that was useful and provides a bit of insight to bolster the amazing insights from Mr. Francis and Mr. Gordon earlier. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kade, for your insightful presentation. We are now going to move into a section where we all have the opportunity to participate. It's a question and answer section. And Dr. Kade, I'm going to have you, please. Of course, he will provide responses to the questions posed. Is this the roving mic or is there okay, great. Okay, you can just indicate. Don't be shy now.
Angela Hamilton, NEPO. I was just wondering about the shelter that you... sorry. So the shelter that you mentioned that was built in the Bahamas, I think. What do they do with it when it's not being used as a shelter? It looked like a very extensive building, so I was just wondering.
Definitely an extensive building. Not many Category 5 plus shelters in the Caribbean at the moment, so it's really a landmark. It actually won a global award for a climate resilient infrastructure, as a disaster resilience measure. So it's next to a school. It's in a community center, nearby the school, nearby other community center activities. And so when it's not in use, which is the vast majority of the time, it's used as a general community center. So it's actually titled the Abaco Community Center. And it functions as a disaster shelter as needed. And so what we integrated into it was a large IT facility, digital access facility for the community, but also for monitoring, when disaster threats come ahead. So actually you can do that in this shelter itself, in the community, at the community level. So that's with the relevant connections and equipment in there. You have a kind of Medivac center, and so you have a nice size medical center to be able to treat probably three or four people at a time, with all the other facilities of the ambulance port and all these kind of things, a heliport, et cetera, nearby. So there's that. There's a large kitchen and other facilities in there, and of course there's a large ground around for sports for the kids from school and in the community center. So it was designed in a way to be a community center from the get-go, especially given the investment of a few $million US. So it's a good support to the community recovery, in addition to preventing, helping reduce the risk of when future disasters come. Right.
Thank you so much. I see another question. I'm going to ask, please, Angela, you started, right? And thank you that you state your name and the organization that you represent, and then pose your question.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Danelia Aitchison, and I'm from the National Conservation Trust Fund of Jamaica. I think I wanted to ask more around lessons learned for the debris removal and the component on the circularity or the circular economy, and if there's any lessons learned, as that's something the Trust Fund is looking to scale.
Yes. No, definitely important platform for the green recovery, needless to say, the Trust. So, our work around the debris hasn't been so much about the big trucks and the big items as Mr. Gordon was talking about. So we focused our initiatives at the community level largely at cash for work. So in terms of, again, building back that community income and resilience. So we had a number of cash for work initiatives where the community members that might be having less income or even out of work because of the hurricane are then given this kind of employment opportunity through that initiative. And so that involves partnering with also recycling initiatives to actually recycle some of the materials, which partly could include, of course, the wood chipping example, but it's beyond that. Reuse, recycling approaches. So for us, it's that combination of supporting the community in terms of those kind of needs, income needs, et cetera, but also achieving those green goals at the same time. So it's worked out to be quite interesting in terms of successes in a few parishes and communities where the program has been active, and we'll be happy to share those for possible scale-up through the Trust. That would be great, I think. Yeah.
Go ahead. She's come at the microphone.
Thank you, Winnie Berry, with an interest in education. Yes, I was so impacted, I think, by your first slide that showed the contrast between the 20th century, ocean warming, and the 21st century. What impacted me was that at exactly 2000, the year 2000, I saw a stark increase. Talk about stark realities. Increase in ocean warming. It's like up to the 20th century, in the 90s and so on. And it's what would account for that? We know that we have had global warming. We know we have been having ocean warming. We know what some of those impacts have been. But what happened in 2000 that could speak to that? Almost at the end of a century. It seems so significant and seem, in my mind, out of man's capacity. The fact that at the end of 1,000 years, at the end of 100 years, at the end of 100 years, exactly, we see a major shift in global warming. If you could put that slide back up, then maybe my colleagues here would have a look, and maybe they may be as shocked as I am.
Let's do that. So we'll go back to the first slide, right? Just so I remember also what that one is. So
that's it.
This one, right?
Look at that. Look at that, colleagues. Blue as against red, and we're looking on that x-axis.
Correct. So, one from a statistical perspective, the line is set, the zero is set at that level. So, when something would cross the line would then change to another year if you were to change the 0 point. So that's kind of a critical point for ocean heating. So that's now the reason why it would tip into the 2000s and beyond. Well, one factor could be the buildup. So basically when it comes to that kind of carbon deposits into the ocean and the impacts, then the turnaround impacts into the heating effect, there's a lag factor. So it wouldn't be that something happened in 2000 to cause that. It would be a lag factor where it would have progressively, during those other years, increased the, let's say, reserve of carbon and the impact and the overall, heat that's getting into the oceans, the overall planetary heating. So that's one. The other thing is that, of course, we know that there's a curve to carbon emissions. So even though for hundreds of years it's been going on for a couple, the industrial emissions have been going for a couple hundred years, it was at a relatively modest increase until it starts to
just
accelerate.
Just at the shift of the century? Exactly.
So about half of the emissions that we have seen in recent times. So about half of the emissions growth that we've seen in recent decades happened with the rapid expansion of globalization. So you'll see the rapid expansion of globalization in the 90s onwards. There were some important things that happened in the 80s, early 90s, and so you had this rapid expansion of globalization in the 90s onwards. You have some major economies joining things like World Trade Organization and really scaling up 90s onwards their industrialization and emissions. So the larger emerging economies, but even the OECD countries. So you do see an expansion, and it's not just about carbon. You see this when it comes to the extractive sector in general. You see a lot of more pressure on resources and a lot more intensity of consumption globally as a modern era of globalization really kicks off 90s onwards. So I don't want to say that's the reason for this graph, because I'm not an oceanographer or really a climate scientist, but I'm just giving some possible background issues.
Thank you very much. My name is Conrad Douglas. I am the head or CEO of Conrad Douglas and Associates Limited. and its subsidiary, Environmental Science and Technology Limited. First, let me commend you on your excellent presentation.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
And I'm pleased to see that such great strides have been taken in recent times to address a number of problems in Jamaica and the Caribbean and the world at large.
Right.
I've had a great privilege and pleasure and honor of working with the United Nations system for many, many years. I don't care to mention the number of organizations, but including UNDP itself. And I must commend my colleague and the excellent question which he has raised. The fact of the matter is simply that there are several things that are just coming to the fore at the present time. And one of the things that we ought to bear in mind is that most of this was predicted from the 1880s. And Svante Arrhenius, a Swedish Nobel laureate, wrote elegant equations about this. And he said essentially that what we're experiencing now will take off exponentially. Right. And I believe that this is something that still eludes most of us. And what we see as an incremental, minuscule, or minor change in the previous year, or even decade or century, is now taking off. And that is what the graphs are showing. In addition to globalization, we are also experiencing the serious situation of a major increase in global population. And the fact is that in the early part of the 1900s, the world's population was just about 1.3 billion. And it has increased to almost 8 billion at this time. So when we have to provide all the needs of the people of the earth, food, clothes, shelter, transportation, healthcare, etc., then invariably the need for energy is going to increase. And traditionally, we have been using and consuming fossil fuels. Hence, carbon dioxide and all the other greenhouse gases, their emission rates are going to increase. So those are some of the fundamental causes. Now, you mentioned, for example, El Nino in your presentation. Right. I know it exacerbates the situation. The fact of the matter is we should prepare ourselves for even worse situations and act very swiftly. We have with us Vice President International of Environment, Health, Safety, and Quality, Mr. Scott Platts, one of the sponsors of this program. Yes. And I must tell you that Jamaica has had a lot of foresight in these things for many years. And we had one of the finest energy mix policies, including the non-renewables, coal, oil, gas. And thank God we had it. And of course the renewables. And the fact is that LNG, NG, natural gas, was among them. And we must commend ourselves and people like Mr. Platts and his company that we have moved swiftly in just under 10 years to make natural gas power 66% of the demand for our energy. Thank you.
Right. No, thanks for that addition. Definitely, I think that was a very important set of points, including the National Climate Plan, the NDC, which was successfully submitted to the United Nations before the last COP. And so the new National Climate Plan, the Enhanced National Climate Plan of Jamaica, the NDC 3.0 as it's called, really ramps up some of the measures for climate resilience. And big congratulations to MWEC and all of society, everyone that was part of that development, because you see there the goal for rapidly increasing renewable energy in Jamaica, which of course makes so much sense in terms of energy independence and decentralized solutions, the benefits of that. But thanks for that, definitely.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Doc. Is there any other question? We have room for another one or two. Okay, we're going to take these hands up as the two last questions. Remember to say your name, please, and the organization that you represent.
want to use this one?
It's not. Oh, yeah. All right. So it's not really a question, right? It's really a suggestion. I spent a lot of time in the disaster era after Melissa doing some geotagging and digging under the debris management project.
Okay.
And one of the things we realized, we know the UN's effort to have the residents participate in pay for removal of debris. But one of the things that we learned that while we were in the disaster era, Petersfield, Betheltown, up in the hills, Darlaston, is that when we went to go for some of these debris, we couldn't touch it. And we realized that the UN had this initiative on the ground. But the fact is that the people are saying that unless the government agencies come and do the assessment first, that they can get money, you couldn't touch the debris. So regardless of the list of cirrhosis and whatever health impacts, you just could not touch the debris until they know that they got an assurance that they're going to get money from Ministry of Labour. Yeah, that's one of the things that we learned. Second thing that we learned is that we went to some schools and they were throwing out furniture. No, I know that there's a big gap in terms of furniture in schools. No, the top of the desks were damaged by water, but the rest was metal. They can reuse it. But they were throwing out a lot of these desks out for collection. And we know that we can recycle because there are some, maybe not at the primary schools, but some of the technical schools have workshop that could just replace the top of these desks. Right. Basically recycling them. Right? So these are some of the things we learned during our time in the field. So you might pay them to remove the debris, but until they know that they're going to get money from government, you can't touch debris.
Yeah, no, it's complex locally, as you're alluding to. But I'll definitely defer to my colleagues at MLSS or Ministry of Education, et cetera, in terms of some of those situations or challenges in terms of the government policy. But we definitely, as the United Nations system, we definitely provide support to the children that have been affected, schools. UNICEF, of course, is the lead in our team in terms of cooperating with schools on the recovery. So I'll definitely mention that to them because that's an important feedback also for. And we have a representative from Ministry of Education.
Yes. I don't know if I heard all. I was a little distracted, but I think I heard you say something about them not being able to appreciate recycling. I think that's the essence of what I heard. Yes. I want to share with you, though, that the ministry has a policy of recycling. We have actually had schools right across the 7 regions invest in what? Making their own furniture. I'm just using that example. And also, in making their furniture, they're using materials that were depleted within the schools. Some of the schools are able to do it better than others. And so schools that show highest potential in reproducing these, they have been producing them, and the ministry, and we pay them, the schools, to do it. So there is a policy. With us on board together, when you have those concerns, of course you can always bring it to us, because I'm sure we can improve what is happening. But there is a policy of recycling, using old materials to improve future materials. But we do have a problem too with vandalism in our schools in terms of the care we take of some of the resources around us. Stewardship, as we speak about here, of our environment is key, because we know for many of these furniture, we still have wooden furniture that come from the hugging trees, right? And so on. So stewardship all around, if we look at where we get our resources and so on, that is part of the education to fix the minds as to how we care and also to how we recycle. You spoke also to solid waste and how we utilize our solid waste or dispose of it. And that again is critical. Parenting association, not the schools, what they do and how they plan to utilize their waste, what they put back in the soil or bury in the soil to improve the quality of the soil, is all part of the education of what we do. So I'm not straying. The recycling is something we do, but perhaps not enough. And with you on board with us, we can reinforce that. Thank you.
Thanks. I just want to commend also the Youth CEO program, because it looked really quite an amazing initiative. So, and we look forward to working with NEPA possibly on that. I mean, there's space for having youth UN representatives, I suppose. We look forward to working with the Trust on some of the local actions, with MWIC on some of possibly the loss and damage work or other tracks of work, and with many people here today. So just as a follow-up, I think that was quite amazing. That was what was presented, before the keynote, before the distinguished lecture. But there's a lot of opportunities out there, so we really stand ready to just work with all of you on many of these priorities. Just want to say that.
Okay, so we are going to take our final question in the interest of time.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kadisha Crony. I am a master STEAM chemistry teacher as well as an adjunct lecturer, and I'm representing the Association of Science Teachers of Jamaica. Okay, Dr. Devonish said I should stand. And my question is centered around resilience building in communities through education. So I want to know a little bit more on how the UNDP across the globe or your regions involve students in your resilience building process, not just as volunteers, but in the education process itself.
Yes, excellent question. So youth generally is a major priority for UNDP and for other UN agencies, so whether it be UNEP, FAO, UNICEF. Across the House, youth is really a priority. Because in many countries, it's such a significant share of the demographic. So, and also as we're looking to the future leaders and future, actors, stakeholders. So we really try to engage youth through dedicated youth climate programming. So we have globally what we call the Youth Climate Champions program, where we do provide technical assistance, support, youth empowerment to youth around the world. Especially with the focus on the most vulnerable, so small island development states and other hotspots of climate impact. That's connecting to the negotiations, so bringing their voices into those COPs, the climate COPs, the Conference of the Parties under the Climate Convention every year, but also at the national level, bringing their voice to decision makers into policy space. Here in Jamaica, for example, 4 years running, we've brought together what we call the Ready, Set, Great dialogue, where we bring youth across the island together, and they compete actually to come up with the sustainable solutions for various challenges. Sometimes it's on the challenge of inequality, sometimes on challenge of climate, sometimes on challenge of digitization, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's competition, so there's a similar process to the youth CEO, and of course they get awards, they get grants, they get internships at UNDP if they're interested in pursuing a UN career eventually. But that's a process where we also bring in thought leaders. Some of for example, the leaders from the business community in Jamaica, whether based outside of Jamaica or here, and they provide them mentorship and advice on things like startups, since so many of them are eyeing startups. So a big focus is on those startup SMEs for the green transition, because there's a big space there for SMEs to really play a role as leaders. So that's been a specific element of it, is entrepreneurship, youth entrepreneurship for green solutions. And so that's something, so stay tuned. Our focal point is here with us today from UNDP, Gillian Scott, for that youth initiative. And so stay tuned for the next Ready, Set, Great initiative with youth. And maybe the theme will be on ecosystem restoration this year, probably rightly so. But thanks for the question, yes.
For responding. Thank you, everyone, for participating and for the thoughtful questions raised and the responses provided. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure that you'll agree that we really can't thank Dr. Kode enough. So can we just get one more round of applause for him? Doc, Your remarks have reinforced the importance of integrating ecosystem-based solutions into planning decisions, something that we know and we try to practice, but it's always good to hear it and then to hear the ways in which you are practicing it, some of your solutions in Jamaica, the Caribbean, and the wider world. We thank you. The perspectives shared today provide valuable guidance as we continue to strengthen our approaches to disaster risk reduction, climate adaptation, sustainable development, and environmental stewardship. On behalf of NEPA and all those who are gathered here today, we extend our sincere appreciation for your contribution to this very important discussion by way of your distinguished lecture. Ladies and gentlemen, as Dr. comes for a brief token of our appreciation, we thank him once more. We invite Italy, Pattison, or Chanel to give Doc a special token of our appreciation. And so, as we bring, today's program to a close, it's my pleasure to offer a few words on behalf of NEPA. This afternoon provided an excellent opportunity for reflection, learning, and engagement as we continue to celebrate NEPA, National Environmental Awareness Week 2026, especially the 25th anniversary of this noble institution. Again, thank you to our distinguished lecturer, Dr. Kishane Kade, for sharing his valuable insights on the theme. And you know, Doc, if I should just use a little bit of chairman's privilege, the slide that got me was when you overlaid the disaster vulnerability onto the social parameters. Like when I saw that huge increase, I was like, wow. I know every slide will be different for everybody, but that's the one that really snapped to me. Thank you again. Your presentation has challenged us to think more strategically about the role of ecosystems, resilience, and sustainable land use planning in shaping Jamaica's future. We also extend gratitude to our special guests and speakers, and in the interest of time, we know who they are, so we give them a round of applause. CEO, we have to single you out, though, for your initiative about the Young CEO program for the day. That is an awesome thought. And it is an initiative that demonstrates the agency's commitment to leadership development and succession planning. We also thank Dr. Winnie Berry for the endorsement offered. To Accelerate Energy, our major sponsor, for their generous support of this event. We also acknowledge Separate Limited, Sagicor Group Jamaica Limited, Juicy Beef Limited, Campari Group Jamaica, PriceSmart, Hope Zoo, Nature Preservation Foundation, and Connect Services Limited for their valuable contributions and support. Thanks also to our own Miss Angela Hamilton, the Public Education and Corporate Communication Branch, administrative and technical support teams, the staff of the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel for their efforts in ensuring the success of the event. Extra thanks, and can I say big up? It's okay? Extra thanks and big up to the National Environmental Awareness Week Planning Committee. And that's chaired by our Deputy CEO, Anthony Mackenzie, and team. A part of the team, so I got some additional instructions. Thank you, Aisha. To our guests, partners, stakeholders, members of the media, and representatives of government, academia, civil society, and the private sector, thank you for your presence and participation. Your continued support is essential as we work together to advance environmental stewardship, sustainable development, and national resilience. So, based on the instructions, I'm going to invite my colleagues to give token of appreciation to Dr. Winnie, Miss McLaren, and Miss Bernard. Please come, ladies. And then, while they are preparing, ladies and gentlemen, as we celebrate 25 years of service by the National Environment and Planning Agency, may we continue to strengthen our partnership and collective commitment to protecting Jamaica's natural resources and building a more sustainable future for generations to come. After the presentation, it will now bring us to the end of today's program. Excuse me. For me, it was my absolute pleasure. When I say absolute, I mean absolute pleasure. Yes. To take us through the proceedings. On behalf of NEPA, thank you for joining us. You have been a wonderful audience, and we saw that with the questions asked. We wish you a safe journey home, pleasant remainder of the day, and an enjoyable and relaxing weekend. God's blessings all.